For decades, public media has been a public-private partnership. A recent executive order from the White House represents a direct attempt to interfere with our work. Learn how you can help protect public media at boisestatepublicradio.org/funding.
From Boise State Public Radio, this is The Connector. It's Idaho's Daily News. Good morning. I'm George Prentice. We have a number of stories for you today, including yet another challenge to another book in the Boise Public Library system. We'll tell you about a compromise over EV parking spaces between Ada County and the City of Boise. There's an update to Chinook salmon season because of an abundance of salmon near the Bonneville Dam. And we have an update on resettlement of those Afrikaner refugees, their resettlement here in Idaho. It is Wednesday, the 14th of May, and here come today's stories. The Boise Public Library Board of Trustees meets today. They have a full agenda, and on it, another challenge to a book. You'll remember Idaho's law that governs how libraries respond to materials that any individual considers to be offensive. This time, the book in question is Stolen Focus: Why You Can't Pay Attention and How to Think Deeply Again. Nonfiction, published in 2022, it considers how technology affects brains and behavior. All copies of the book are in the adult nonfiction section of the library, but a complainant is pointing to some profanity in the book, saying it was unnecessary. It's important to note that the requester said she doesn't have a library card, and she doesn't even live in Boise. Library staff looked at the circulation of the book. It's been checked out 171 times, and then provided a scorecard to the Board of Trustees on whether the book meets select criteria. The library director is recommending to the board that the book remain where it is in the adult nonfiction collection. The Board of Trustees will have the final say. Their meeting today is set for 11:30 a.m. Afrikaner refugees will arrive in Twin Falls by the end of this week. They're part of the first group of white South Africans granted refugee status in the U.S., that following an order by the Trump White House to expedite their arrival. This comes as President Trump has frozen indefinitely all other refugee resettlement in Idaho and across the country. Julie Lucas spoke to the agency helping the new refugees resettle here in Idaho.
The nonprofit U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants will be helping the newcomers with case management, housing, and employment for their first 4 months in the country.
Once they're here, we work very closely with them to provide services, including employment, and ensure their self-sufficiency.
That's Chandra Upreti, the director of the USCRI branch in Twin Falls.
We are planning to receive 9 folks, 2 families. Who is coming next? I don't have that information at this point in time.
USCRI, which operates nationwide, will help 5 other white Afrikaners resettle in Iowa and North Carolina. About 24 more will be resettled by other agencies across the U.S. Refugees are vetted at the federal level, and the State Department assigns them to local agencies.
We just, receive folks that the government has decided to bring in and provide the services to them, just like any other refugees.
But all other refugee admissions have stopped. In February, Upreti's office was getting ready to resettle 40 refugees in southern Idaho, coming from countries like Sudan, Eritrea, and Afghanistan. Their flights, and those of 12,000 others vetted to arrive in other parts of the U.S., were canceled after Trump's executive order put their arrival on hold indefinitely.
It's our hope that refugees from all over the world, different parts of the world that are waiting for the process, would be also able to come to Twin Falls and be able to reunite with their loved ones.
Upreti says a few refugees reached out to him after hearing the news Afrikaners were arriving in Idaho, asking if that meant their family members' admission process would soon be resumed. But just like other resettlement agencies, USCRI does not have answers to these questions. Experts point out it typically takes years for refugees to be vetted, let alone be approved for resettlement. So it's unusual these Afrikaners' applications were expedited and flights were booked in a matter of weeks. For his part, Chandra Upreti says it's an honor to help new refugees. He was born in Bhutan and fled to Nepal, coming to the U.S. as a refugee in 2008.
My wife and I both grew up in refugee camp, with no country to call our own until we resettled here in Twin Falls. And today we're very proud to call Twin Falls our home. And as the director of the Refugee Center, I'm dedicated to offering the same services that we have received when we came as a refugee, and that's what we are focused on.
Following Trump's executive order pausing the resettlement program, the USCRI had to lay off over 400 employees nationwide, including more than half a dozen in Twin Falls. Julie Duqueta, Boise State Public Radio News.
In a statement, the USCRI says they will continue to provide services regardless of country of origin. A dispute over how many electric vehicle spaces should be included in the expansion of the Ada County Jail has ended with an agreement between the county and the City of Boise. But as Troy Oppie reports, the city appears ready to defend its building code requirements for EV parking on future projects, even though state lawmakers say they made it illegal. A dispute over how many electric vehicle spaces should be included in the expansion of the Ada County Jail has ended with an agreement between the county and the City of Boise. Troy Oppie reports.
State lawmakers passed House Bill 86 in March, blocking Idaho cities from requiring any minimum of EV parking spots on construction projects. The legislation came in response to Boise's modern zoning code that requires EV parking for the Ada County Jail expansion project. The two sides were at odds over how many spots would be required, with different interpretations of the code. City planners initially said 133 spots, then backed off to about a quarter of that. The county wanted even fewer. After months of back and forth, the county this week confirmed it has agreed to Boise's most recent condition to install just 4 EV-capable spots as part of the project. Here's City Council President Colin Nash speaking at a meeting last week.
I think it already probably looks kind of bad on us, how this has been dealt with publicly, both on the city and on the county's part, with numbers flying around everywhere.
Nash suggested the lower number was a good faith solution, a way to move forward without a legal battle. But Boise also wrote this week in its decision memo that granted the conditional use permit that the city's modern zoning code predates the new law, and House Bill 86 wasn't written to apply retroactively. Nash called the dispute over EV spots, quote, small potatoes compared to homelessness and housing challenges the county and city need to collaborate on. He hopes the agreement is a step forward in the partnership toward solving bigger issues. Troy Oppie, Boise State Public Radio News.
More Chinook salmon than expected are making their way upriver to Idaho. As James Dawson reports, state officials are relaxing regulations to let anglers cast their lines all week long.
Idaho Fish and Game Commissioners expanded fishing opportunities on the Clearwater River Tuesday after a significant bump in adult Chinook crossing Bonneville Dam. As of Monday, nearly 90,000 of the salmon passed through Bonneville on their way to spawn upstream. That's about 20,000 more adult Chinook than this same time last year, as well as the 10-year average count. Anglers can now fish for Chinook all week long on the main Clearwater River, as well as the Middle and South Forks. Daily catch limits will stay at 4 adults with a season limit of 10 adult Chinook salmon. Fishing on the North Fork of the Clearwater is still limited to Thursday through Sunday. James Dawson, Boise State Public Radio News.
And that is today's episode of The Connector. I'm George Prentice. We will see you back here on Thursday. To stay in touch with the news between now and then, visit boisestatepublicradio.org. Better yet, download the free Boise State Public Radio app. And thanks for listening.